Hello. Hi. Do you remember me? Probably not. It's been a really long time. I admit I'm sorry. I thought I would take a break from my very intermittent posting of traveling to post this other very random video because we are drawing to a close of the year, would you believe? And I still haven't finished editing my videos. It's fine. I've had a huge exporting issue actually, and it's been a nightmare and I can't fix it, so I'm kind of stuck. But I really missed filming and producing something and putting it out there in the world, even if it's just a few hundred people who see it. So here I am speaking to my few hundred people. I feel like it's been a bit of a whirlwind of a year. I would be remiss if I just skipped over and didn't speak about it or anything that's happened this year, because a lot has happened and I've learned so much and I've been challenged and pushed to such a great extent that I thought I would share it with you, because I'm hoping aspects of it, although everything I talk about is quite personal and specific to me, I'm hoping a lot of it is relatable and maybe it's something that you can draw from yourself. So I kind of just fell off the map. Where have I been? What am I doing? What's going on? I am in Paris. I live here now. I live in France. I have a student visa because I'm doing my master's here in human rights and humanitarian action with a specialization in migration. I'm studying at Sciences Po. It's a really good political science university. I'm just drawing to the end of my semester now. Like, I just had my final exam yesterday and a final meeting for a project today. So it's really wrapping up. It's really done. It's a 2-year program, so I'm only a quarter of the way through. But wow, I already it's already been a lot. I wouldn't say I've considered dropping out, but I have contemplated the idea of contemplating taking a break, just because yeah, it was a lot. I've got it now. I'm okay. All is well. I'm kind of living my dream life here. I've moved in with my partner. We've been together 5 years, and this is the first time we've ever gotten to properly live together because we did long distance for 2.5 years. So that's been really crazy. That's really cool. Kind of living with my best friend. I feel like it's made everything so much more special being here, and I really feel at home. We've been able to decorate the apartment and make it ours, and yeah, it's a whole new phase of life. Things are happening. I feel more mature, more adult. Yeah, it's really cool. Anyway, I thought I would be remiss for not reflecting on some of the things that I've thought about. I'll be honest, I feel like I could do a much deeper reflection on everything, but that's probably going to be reserved for my journal, not you. I'm sorry. But there are some key sections and subsections we can discuss. First of all, on a related note to university, my ego, my self esteem, wow, has that taken a hit in the last few months? It is bruised, bloody, battered. I went from graduating a bachelor's where I was one of the top students. Everything came very easily because most people didn't put in that much effort. So anything I applied for and went for, it was most likely that I was going to get it. Obviously, undergrad is much chiller, lower stakes. I was like, I don't know, doing uni like max 10 hours a week. Like, I was getting good grades but not putting in necessarily that much time and effort. I had so much free time on my hands. I was really built up, really confident. Everyone believed in me. Everyone was really like, I was like the interesting, different person, because most people at my university were British because I went to a British university. Most people didn't know what they wanted to do afterwards. So yeah, the fact that I was international, that I was older, I was a mature student. I knew where I was going. I had a mission. Like, I was doing well in uni. I was doing all these extracurriculars. Like, I got a lot of praise for that. And I mean, I think I'm quite a down to earth person, but obviously, like, that does inflate your ego a bit. Like, I was like, I am cool. I am doing all these things. Wow, I'm managing so well. And then I went traveling for a few months by myself, and I did Southeast Asia, and that was amazing. And I felt so zen and calm and so confident. And like, I think I even said this in one of my vlogs, like, oh, I feel like all the good things are just coming to me. I'm not approaching anyone, people just approach me, and I'm finding so many friends through like organic discussion, and it was just a really good time. Anyway, so I went from that to taking a huge nosedive. My ego plummeted once I started university at the beginning of September. There was like so much self-comparison in ways I would never have even fathomed prior to starting this university. Self-comparison around my intelligence, my background, how interesting I was, my clothing, my sense of fashion, my hobbies, my creativity, my language skills. Absolutely everything got thrown into question, and I felt like I just completely lost sense of who I was and my positive traits, I guess, when choosing outfits for like going to uni, I would be like kind of paralyzed because in the beginning everyone was so decadent, so dressed up, so chic. Even if it wasn't like, oh, that's like something really expensive, it's just everyone was just it was overwhelming, and I just felt paralyzed in all these different ways. And people came from literally all over the world, having done so many things. A lot of people worked before they came, and a lot of them had much more relevant work experience than I did, and for much longer or much more interesting. I felt so bland, and everyone was just vivacious and fascinating, and I loved meeting them. And initially it was really exciting to meet all these people, and then I just felt really bland. And a lot of my hobbies and stuff involve, I don't know, just being in my own space, doing my own thing, and I felt like I physically couldn't keep up. Even people my age, older than me, were doing all these extra things and going out all the time, and saying all these things like, this is way more chill than my undergrad. And I was like, I'm drowning. Because also at the same time, the workload was insane, and I seemed to be the only one who was like completely drowning and stressed. And I think I did get my comeuppance in that. That sounds malicious, but in the sense that I think a lot of people were not very stressed in the beginning, and I started out really highly stressed by the workload and the expectations. And I think everyone gradually got more stressed, but because I was already at the top like tier of stressedness, I physically couldn't go higher. So my stress level just naturally had to decline slowly over time, as I started realizing what was actually important to prioritize, what should be done, what could be like neglected a bit, what readings were really important, what readings I could skim or skip or just get a summary of. That was the first thing, was just I would never have even thought that I could feel so insecure again. Like I'm sure when I was younger, like I definitely felt insecure, and there was so much that made me feel not confident in myself. But these past like 5 years, I've really built myself up, and so I would never have thought that in just like a month everything could kind of come crashing down. I worked through it though, very proud of myself. I kind of had an action plan. Like I just had a diary entry of just venting about how shit I was as a person. And like I'm in France now, and I was comparing myself to native French speakers. My French level is B2 bordering C1, right? And I was comparing myself to these people who it is their native language. And I was like, how am I so shit at French? God, I've been learning it for so many years and I'm so terrible. I'm an embarrassment. Like, I was so hard on myself and had such high expectations in such a short time. And it was too much. Like, it was too much. So anyway, like I said, action plan, worked on it, was like, okay, well, I'm not feeling great in these areas. What can I do? First of all, can I do anything, or am I just being delusional? A lot of it was I was just being delusional. Like, of course I'm an interesting person, but and other people's interestingness doesn't detract from my own. There's not like a limited supply of charisma or intelligence or anything like that. I also made an effort to surround myself by people who made me feel good about myself, who I felt comfortable around, and who I could learn from, who could push me. I didn't want to fall into this well of resentment and not make the most of the opportunities that were around me. And I also didn't want to become too insulated because I was so overwhelmed by work that it's, for me, in those situations, it's really easy to become very closed off, very like, I just need to buckle down and do it, and I can't be social or anything. And so that kind of leads to my next thing, which is all about balance. So like I said, the workload has been crazy. Within the first week, they were like, oh, you need to actually do in the field research project. It's due in 6 weeks. It was basically like a mini thesis. And I had 6 months to do my bachelor's thesis, and now suddenly it was like just this random class is asking us to do this research project of like, I can't remember, 3,000, 4,000 words. And in 6 weeks, on top of all my other coursework, I was having to do 10 interviews and then analyze that data and make a decent report. Still haven't got my grade back on that. Fingers crossed I did okay. That was insane. And then I had mid-semester exams that were on Saturdays, which was awful. And then right after that, like there wasn't even that much uni left. And then suddenly I found myself in finals, and I was writing like so many exams. I had to write a 3-hour exam where I wrote 3 essays about the international politics of Africa, and I had to memorize so much information and so many topics for this exam, and it was a lot. And at the same time, I was applying for alternance, which is like an apprenticeship program where you work part-time and study part-time in your second year. And it's really cool because they pay for your fees and all this stuff, your tuition fees, and you get an actual salary. And as someone who is very financially stressed, that was really enticing, but you have to be C1 for that. So at the same time I was studying for all my exams, I actually was going to have to write, I actually had to write a C1 French test. I'm not C1, I'm B2. I had to, yeah, study super intensely for this exam to prove that I was C1, very fake it till you make it vibes. And I did make it. I was literally, they said, à la fourchette basse, like at the like lowest fork of C1. Don't worry, I'm actually going to do a C1 course next semester, but I was doing the B2 course this semester. Anyway, I decided to do an interview in French. Oh my gosh, it was a lot. And plus, I had two part-time jobs. I'm looking after a kid multiple times a week, and I have a social care job, like remote administrator job, where I do a lot of invoicing. All this to say, I had a lot of shit going on this semester, okay? A lot was going on. This is why I've not recorded. I've just been in like a black hole of chaos. But it was through all of this that I kind of had the epiphany that the work doesn't go away. As intensely, as hard as I work, it just doesn't go away. And I watched this really interesting video by Mina Lee about productivity, and I'm the most productive person you'll ever meet. Like, I love hyper optimizing. I love being productive. I love making the best use of my time. I have a huge fear of losing time. So when I'm so overwhelmed in this way, I feel a lot of expectations of myself and a lot of pressure to just get it all done. Get it all done. I have 10 assignments. Okay, I'm going to do them all right now. It doesn't really work that way. When you have that much work, I don't think you work the most effectively by trying to get it all done immediately. And so it was, I mean, I've had this epiphany and had this epiphany, I feel like, so many times in my life, but we revisit it again this semester. One day I'll get it. It'll stick in here eventually. But it was about balance, okay? It was like balance is really important. I feel like a robot, like a zombie, an alien, by pushing through so intensely and by pushing myself to my limit constantly. It's just a recipe for burnout, and it makes me unpleasant to be around. Like, it puts more stress on people around me, like my partner. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Towards the end of the semester, I would say the second half, I was much better at, even if I had loads to do, still taking evenings off, still saying yes to things with friends, like actually stopping at like 7 p.m. and being like, I know I'm only halfway through this like reading, but I'm gonna stop now and I'm gonna go and cook and spend the evening with my boyfriend. I think that's something that I'm really gonna focus on next year, next semester, really instating that balance and taking my like downtime as seriously as my deadlines, because I feel like the deadlines feel much more important and it feels much easier to just breeze through all my own boundaries with myself than it does to just relax. Like, relaxing is really hard for me when I have a lot to do. So yeah, that's a big thing that I want to do better with next year and that I've taken away from this year. I definitely did better and I can still do better, especially in terms of regulating stress and not letting it take over my entire life when I'm busy. Being able to have fun, for me, I think it's really hard to not have things like that in the back of my mind when I'm having fun, but I want to really work on disconnecting and self-regulating. Next is friendship. So I was talking about this to someone recently. It kind of felt like fate because she's like the partner of one of my boyfriend's friends, and we met for one of the first times and we're having this really cool conversation about one of our side gigs, and it was around community building and community workshops and helping people journal and reflect. It was just so wholesome. It sounds really amazing, and the way she was describing it made it sound just, I don't know, just really, really lovely. And it reminded me how community has been so important to me this year. And it kind of started towards the end of the year, towards the beginning of the year, I would say. What really triggered it was I went on this away weekend for activists. This is when I was still in my undergrad in the UK. I was working with an organization called People and Planet, part of the student branch. And they invited a bunch of activists, like student activists, on a weekend away in Chester, which is just outside Manchester. Had never heard of it before, but it's actually a really cute town. They had hired out almost the entire youth hostel. And so there were about, I would say, 50 youth activists. And it was just a weekend where they had workshops and panels with guest speakers about all these different topics relating to activism and specific issues, from more local issues to more international ones, like what lessons we can learn, what we can take away from that. Also, how to sustain yourself as an activist, because kind of relates back to what I was saying before. You can't do everything at once. It's a marathon. Like, you have to learn to seek balance, seek community when doing these things, and find downtime to rejuvenate. Otherwise you're just burnt out, and what can you do, when you're in that state? So activism is also just really about looking after yourself. Anyway, this weekend was so amazing and enlightening. I was surrounded by so many amazing people. It was such a grassroots vibe, and I was just I literally, I'm not a very spiritual person, but it felt like a spiritual experience. It just made me feel rejuvenated in terms of being involved in this space, in this sphere. I went with three friends from university who are in like the same sphere as me. That was also very validating because I think we all felt it. Like we all were like, whoa. And I think what really helped is we were taken out of our normal life and put in this bubble in the middle of nowhere for a weekend, and it just allows you to be completely immersed. You're not stressed, you're not thinking about anything else, you're just in a completely different headspace, a different world. And it allowed us to really tap into everything that was available, and just be so reflective. Like I was having late night conversations till 3 a.m. with people. We had bonfires and marshmallows and talent shows, and it felt like I was a child again at camp. And it was beautiful, it was very cute, very wholesome, and that led to us like wanting to do more and realizing how important community was. Like we felt like our cups were overflowing by the end of that weekend, and it was like, okay, it's not just a myth. Community is important, and it can change everything. Friendship and community, like since then, have been really big in my mind. Like having people over, but in intentional ways, like having really like cooking beautiful food for people and having them over. Like I mean, just recently I had friends over for Secret Santa, and we exchanged, it was so sweet, we had like the most beautiful gift exchange where everyone had put so much thought into their gifts. And then we did like tarot readings. I find tarot readings very satisfying because I feel like it can just give you more tools to work with in the sense of self-reflection. So if you draw these cards and they align with you, it can really help you acknowledge the feelings and then delve deeper. And if it doesn't really align, it can be like, well, that was random, that doesn't align with me. So that's kind of how I use it, and that's how we were using it. And it just made us have like all these lovely deep conversations. And I mean, before I left Bristol, there was a huge going away celebration for me, and it was like 12-hour event. We're all just sitting on these picnic blankets on the floor, like having the most deep conversations and revelations. And it's also just very girlhood vibes, like it's very beautiful. Anyway, I feel like I missed out a lot of that in my younger 20s. I didn't really have that community, have that space, and that's partially self-inflicted. I never thought to seek it out. I was a very individualistic, independent person, but I think I also maybe didn't necessarily have access to these spaces. And now I feel like at university it's much easier to meet people than if you're at work. I also would never have thought of, I think when I was younger, going to clubs or like relevant community meetings or things like that. I think that's something that's really come as I've gotten older, like seeking these spaces out. But yeah, I just think as a society we're very insulated, and this isn't a hot take, everyone says this, and there's so many video essays even I've seen out there that speak about this and how we need community and we've lost community. But it's true, and I think it really makes us feel more alone and feel more resentful, and it's easier to be rude to people, it's easier to like not interact with people around you, and it's easier to feel really hopeless and helpless about the situation ongoing and everywhere in the world. The way that things are shifting, it's so easy to feel like, I don't know, completely lost. But I feel like if you have that community space to go to, that's how you are able to, I don't know, make these human connections with people you would never have spoken to before in your entire life, and hear different perspectives and meet really interesting people, and also just realize that humanity is good. And I've met a lot of people recently and know some people in my life who really hate humanity, and I can understand why. Look at what we've done. We've not done a lot of good things. But I think on an individual level, people are not bad for the most part. Like, I don't think most people are bad, and I have a lot of faith in humanity in a lot of ways, and I think that comes from community experiences. I think you start seeing people as three-dimensional humans and feel less individualistic, less selfish when you have this community space, and I think you're more likely to just be nice to those around you, like approach people in good faith and be kind to random people and smile to them on the street. Like, I just think all of that and a lot of society's afflictions would be aided by people just being together and reflecting together and sharing. And also in terms of friendship and community, I realized that I had also fallen into a bad habit of like coffee shop catch-ups, which is very much like I meet a friend for an hour in a cafe, we grab coffee, we talk about our lives, this has happened, this happened, this happened, oh, you won't believe this happened, okay, great, bye. And the next time we see each other is for another catch-up. And I think sometimes those like bridges are necessary when life's really busy, but it's not the most fulfilling, and you're not like creating memories with your friends. You're just, I don't know, like treating them like a journal, and then like that's it. Like you're not having connecting experiences with them. So I think that's also something I realized, and what I'm trying to avoid as much as possible, falling into that kind of cycle, which is what I did a lot in my undergrad, was just having lots of different coffee catch ups with people, but not like making the time to do something together, like go on a road trip, go on a field trip, go out of the city, have a board game night, like these really beautiful formative experiences that you will reflect on when you're older. We're almost done, folks. Two more: health and the fragility of oneself. Yeah, I guess maybe because I'm very young and I have not experienced any long-term or chronic health issues, I think I've always taken my health for granted. I'm a very active person, a very sporty person. I look after myself. I eat relatively. I think because of all of this, I've never necessarily given my health much thought, but wow, this year has made me question that, let me tell you. For context, I spoke about this before, but when I was getting vaccinated for, don't worry, this isn't an anti-vax story, don't fret. But when I was getting vaccinated to go to Southeast Asia, because I realized my immune system is quite bad, I get sick quite easily. I got rubella last year. What the fuck? I don't know. I was vaccinated against it, so God knows. But anyway, because I get all these random diseases and I got some weird shit after I went to Egypt, I was kind of convinced like if I don't get vaccinated before going to Southeast Asia, I know I'm gonna get something weird. So let me do all the vaccinations. And I got all four of my vaccinations at once. I cannot tell you what they all were. There was Japanese encephalitis, there was typhoid, there was, I can't even remember, but there were four. They were the recommended ones. 2 days after, I started having really itchy eyes, specifically my left eye. And then the next day, my eye was like bloodshot and I couldn't see out of it. Like it was super, super blurry. And I was like, this is weird. This was, by the way, this was the day before the weekend of going to the community thing in Chester. So that just adds a little bit of extra context to this whole weekend. It was kind of stressful. Yeah, I went to the eye hospital. Luckily, we had one in Bristol, and they were like, yeah, you have uveitis. I don't think many people my age get uveitis, by the way. I'm pretty sure this is like an older person thing. But yeah, uveitis is a type of eye infection, and they said that it was likely because I'm more like there's a few reasons why it could be, but in my case they suppose that it's probably because I'm more genetically predisposed to it, like it's an underlying thing. And all the vaccines, because I already have a low immune system, all the vaccines that I had at once in one sitting, they potentially lowered my immune system just below that threshold, and it triggered the uveitis. That's not great. So it meant I was taking every hour of my waking hours, I was doing these like little eye drop things, an ideal. But yeah, like steroid eye drops for a week. Didn't get better, got worse actually, until it got to the point I really couldn't see. I felt super vulnerable. I couldn't really leave the house much. Like because I couldn't see out of one eye. Like my depth perception was horrible. And also I just felt very self-conscious because my eye was really like the whites of my eye was just so painful, and I couldn't do shit. Like I needed to do work. I was finishing my thesis. Like I was doing all these things and I couldn't do it. I went back to the hospital. They were like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's like double the infection. They were like so shocked by it. They were calling all these people in because they were like, this is crazy. They don't normally get to see an infection at this advanced stage. Do you mind if they come look? I had Susan and Bill and Charlie all lining up there to like shine a little light in my eye. And they ended up having to inject my eye with steroids because it had gotten to such an advanced stage, and they gave me a different type of steroid that was probably going to help, hopefully, and then it did. But I had to do 6 weeks of eye drops. My eyesight still isn't perfect, actually. My left eye is still, I used to have 20/20 vision and now I do not. Yeah, my left eye is a bit fucked. In the future I'll probably need glasses. Anyway, that was a hugely illuminating experience for me, though. It also led to the whole revelation that I might have PCOS because of my immune issues. So it was just a cascading ball of, wow, I'm a fragile human. And I know that sounds really basic, but I think until it happens to you and you have a bit of a scare or a bit of a, I don't know, a change, yeah, it can be a lot. Let me just preface, millions of people in the world, hundreds of millions, I'm pretty sure, have glasses. It's very normal. I think it's just for someone who is not used to that and not being able to see. I think for anyone, it's a bit scary. And I think going straight to Southeast Asia after that, I was really nervous because I wasn't meant to go alone, and I ended up going alone because a friend dropped out. And that was very vulnerable because I mean, I've traveled alone so much, but traveling alone in this circumstance when my eye still wasn't perfect, and I just felt so much more vulnerable in the world. Like, wow, bad things can happen to me. Anything could happen to me at any time. I was like wanting to retreat, wanting to pull out, and not wanting to go. That's not me. Like, I would never not go on a trip, especially if it was a solo trip. I love solo traveling. Anyway, it was a whole new thing to reckon with about, like, like we're all gonna die one day, bad things can happen to us. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't live. That doesn't mean we shouldn't still, like, do our best, put ourselves out there. Yeah, I guess you should probably ask yourself as well, like, are there things that you're so scared about, untenable possibilities and what could happen, that you're holding yourself back from doing something? Are you like overly scared about traveling, like, and holding yourself back from going to a place you've always wanted to go? That example is actually based on my own life. Would you believe that was a whole big thing? Yeah, just a lot of reflections on my health, but also trying even harder to understand my body and understand how it works. And I think it's really important for us to really understand our bodies and what they need and what they want. And with this whole PCOS journey, it's been very enlightening about how my body is currently functioning, and what I can do to help it. Yeah, lastly, black and white thinking. I am a huge black and white thinker. I think this probably stems from childhood because I was surrounded by people who had very opposing, kind of problematic opinions to mine. It was kind of a self-protection mechanism to shield my opinions by being very staunch in them. Like, that was the only way as a child I knew how to protect them and not be driven over by influential people in my life. It was the only way I knew how to stay true to myself. It was a lot of social justice, human rightsy kind of stuff. Like, because I mean, growing up in a very conservative environment in South Africa, it was very normal for people to be very conservative and very close-minded, and it was a very big deal for me to not be from a young age. And I was very much the black sheep, and so to maintain my status as the black sheep, I really had to be very staunch in my opinions. And although I would listen to people, I would have to hold it really hard in my head and be like, but this is right and I know they're wrong. So, and it's what allowed me to, I think, get out of that environment as a very open-minded person. Anyway, so I can understand where it came from, but I think the problem is now I've carried that into my everyday life and adult life in an environment where it's no longer the case. Like, people around me are never problematic to the extent where I think they're bad people, if that makes sense. There is no one around me who has such insanely opposing views that we could never get along. However, I still have the habit of being very intense in my black and white thinking and not being open to other people's opinions or listening to them, because I think I'm like a open person. Like, I'll listen to them, but I find it really hard to be like, they might be right about that. Like, that's really hard for me. So this year has been quite challenging because I think it's been pointed out to me a couple times by people around me, which is fair, and I appreciate that. And it's something that I've been working really hard to improve on. I started to realize, like, like, this black and white thinking is actually not allowing me to have enough nuance and things in my life and things around ongoing events and all this stuff. It's like, I think there's a lot to take into account, and by being so rigid in my thinking, I'm not letting other perspectives build on what I know already. Yeah, I mean, also something I was saying this to someone else recently, and she was saying what's really interesting is that we find it as a society much harder these days to be able to listen to opposing sides or to be able to listen to an opinion that's not ours. Like, it's much more difficult, and a lot of that lies in the fact that we see, like, our algorithms on our phones, all the adverts that are directed at us, all of this is very much geared towards us and our thoughts and our beliefs and our opinions, and it's constantly being reinforced, and it's like an echo chamber. It's like validating, like, yes, you're right, this is it, and it's completely reaffirms your thought processes and your patterns of thinking. However, it then means when you are confronted by something that is opposing that, it's really difficult because you don't actually come across it that often, and so you feel more uncomfortable, not at ease, more unwilling to process it, because we're not really taught how to process these. Like, I don't think we're given enough critical thinking skills, and we're we're given way too much validation. I mean, if you look at how ChatGPT talks to us, I feel like a child. It's like, wow, that's excellent. That's such an excellent question. I could say anything. I could say the dumbest shit. And it's like, that is the most insightful thing I have ever fucking heard. You are amazing. I think validation is good, okay? I don't, especially for children, it's good to validate children. But I think there comes a time when someone just needs to tell you that you're being a dumbass, or someone needs to tell you that maybe the way you're thinking is not the full picture. And we need to learn to be open to that. And that has been a big step for me as a black and white thinker. I'm still working on it. Even like in my everyday life, like saying things like all the time or never about things that it's not actually all the time, it's not actually never, is a big thing and a big realization for me. I just think we should be open to people sharing perspectives that aren't necessarily fully aligned with ours. I know it can be quite confronting, but I think that uncomfortability means something good. I think if you're just constantly comfortable with everything you're hearing around you, you're not necessarily being challenged. And for all you know, like that perspective that you allow in, it could just further reinforce your beliefs, and that's fine. And like there are definitely situations where someone could come out with the craziest shit, and you're like, yeah, I definitely am more reaffirmed in my belief now that I hear that's what you're thinking. Having that challenge really allows us to build on ourselves and flesh out our thoughts and our beliefs and our patterns and our behavior. And if we don't allow it in, it's actually really hard to grow as a person. Anyway, so that's what I think. Just some girl on a couch in Paris. On reflection, it's been an amazing year. I've had a lot of ups and downs, as you've heard. I've been challenged, I've been pushed to my maximum, I would say. Like the past couple years have been much more chill, but this year was really confronting, very intense, but it was good. I feel like so much has come from it, and next year is 2026. What is it? The year of the new and the shedding of the old and all that stuff. It's coming. I can tell. I can already feel like I'm shedding my skin, and I'm gonna become a whole new Tamarind next year. I'm not gonna become a whole new Tamarind, but I'm gonna become a slightly more improved Tamarind, and I have a lot of goals in my head and things I want to improve on. But balance. I'm not putting too much pressure on myself to be a whole new person, but I'm excited at the prospect of growth and working on myself. I'm really excited to improve on my French. I'm really excited about the idea of an alternance and not being financially stressed anymore and having to do 2 jobs alongside a full-time master's. That would be really great. I'm excited. I'm going to India for a marriage, for a wedding in January, right after I'm going home for 2 weeks to South Africa and then going to India. And I'm so excited for that. My first Indian wedding. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, I think there's a lot to look forward to. And I think next year is the year of just allowing myself to be bad at things. And I think, sorry, this is something that I probably should have said at the beginning. I think a lot of it just comes down to allowing myself to be bad and shitty at things and not perfect and not the best, because that's the only way you can really improve. And I think it's really important to let yourself be bad and start when you're not ready. And I think something that really held me back with French for a long time was I didn't want to speak it in public until I felt like I was fluent. Yeah, girl, that's going to take a while. What does that even mean? I think having conversations always felt very intimidating to me because I was like, well, I'm not fluent and I'm going to sound stupid. And what if they don't understand a certain word, or I blank on a certain word and I just sound dumb and I stop mid sentence and all this stuff? And it's like, well, then you learn from that. And then they tell you what that word is and then you pick up and you keep going. And it's like, the only way is starting when you're not ready. So next year, I'm going to give myself the grace to be bad and to be shitty at things. And honestly, I've been shitty at a lot of things recently. I've been doing watercolors, not my best hobby, I would say, in the sense that I'm very bad at it, but I love it. It's so fun. It brings me so much joy, and it never comes out how I intend, but it's fine. And actually, my boyfriend gifted me like a watercolor workbook, which is really cool, for Christmas, and it has like literal instructions on how to make the fucking thing, and then you got to try it yourself. And that's what I need. I need like child-proof kind of tricks to be able to improve. I've also been crocheting, also not very good at it, but can you tell I'm trying to fight the winter blues? But yeah, look, I'm making a scarf. It's going kind of well, sort of. Just you mustn't look at the bottom because I dropped some stitches and it's fine. I'm already like getting into that mindset of being bad, but it's fine and it's okay. I'm already on like some crochet talk like vibes where I'm comparing myself to expert crocheters, and that's not okay, but working on it. I'm going to go. Thank you for listening. Sorry for, I feel like I spoke very fast, so sorry for that. I'm grateful to you for listening. If there's anything in this that you appreciated or drew from or anything, please, yeah, do let me know. If there's anything else you would add to my very random commentary, please do add it, because I'm sure there's so much that went unsaid. I tried really hard not to repeat things that I feel like I've heard people say, but I don't know, we're all saying the same thing out here. Like there's no such thing as original thought. So yeah, anyway, thanks for listening and have a great holiday period time. I'm so excited. I'm so tired. I can't wait to go home. I'm making crepes tonight. Very excited. And then I'm taking myself on a solo trip to the movies, and I'm going to watch Zootopia too, and that's going to be great. So, okay, bye.